The Toronto Blue Jays picked up a much-needed win against the Washington Nationals. However, they did not gain any ground, but things are really starting to get crazy for this Blue Jay team. Injuries left, right, and center. The team is starting to turn the corner, then they don't turn the corner. So just a bunch of craziness in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and it feels good to be back on the winning side for the Toronto Blue Jays. Wasn't the prettiest of games. The pitchers didn't have their greatest stuff today, but they still came out with the W, and at this point of the season, that's all that matters. You got to pick up W's, and you got to pick them up in succession. So hopefully the Blue Jays could start a win streak here with their next few series against teams below 500. They got to pick up some steam, and they got to make up some ground against these teams. But, Nick, there's so many injuries going on right now, and this is a lineup today that we saw fielded by the Toronto Blue Jays that we haven't seen all season long. And there are guys playing all out of position. There are guys that taking ground balls at positions they haven't played in years. So it's a lot of shuffling around for John Schneider, a lot of questions that need to be answered, and win is a good place to start.
Yeah, the Jays are in a crazy spot right now. Like you said, we'll break all that down as well as the game recap. But we have some crazy news to get into. Before we do, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let's start with some of the injury stuff because, Peter, the injuries, the Jays haven't been hit with the injury bug very much, throughout the season at all. But right now, they're getting absolutely destroyed with it. And it starts with this. Bichette obviously left the last game. You had Matt Chapman leave the last game. And, Peter, it's getting very, very bad. And like you said, we saw in yesterday's game that, injuries were crazy. Today's lineup was very, very bad compared to what we've been seeing, throughout the regular season. We have Ermi Clement, who's been, dominating AAA in his own right, but this was a really bad time for the Jays to get hit with the injury bug. We had Bichette go down, and after the game yesterday, John Schneider said that Bichette's removal was precautionary, and the quad has been bothering him for a while. And Matt Chapman, who we'll also discuss in a little bit, is very injured as well. And, Chapman hasn't been the same guy that he was earlier in the season ever since his middle finger injury from, I believe it was a dumbbell weight. So, Peter, it's a bad time for the Jays to get hit with the injury bug. And like I'll show you guys in a minute, it's led to some kind of crazy stuff go down, specifically from Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s perspective and him potentially playing third base, which is kind of where the craziness begins. And I'll show you that report in a minute. But, Peter, what are your thoughts on the injuries? It's a very, very bad time. We have Eric Swanson as well, who hit the injured list. It's all getting crazy for the Blue Jays, and they win tonight, but they don't gain ground on any of the teams that they're chasing. But we can't really focus on that right now. Given their situation, they need to just keep winning.
It just seems as though the Blue Jays have been flirting with danger all season long, and they haven't taken advantage of many opportunities that have been presented to them. They were kind of lackadaisical in their play, where they had a 3-game lead in the wild card race. They didn't really play with any sense of urgency. And now it's a little late. It's a little late to turn on the gas and to start turning the corner and to start playing better. Now, it's not that the Jays have started to play better at this moment in the season, but there's more urgency now, and you could see them pressing a little bit more. There's more frustration with the players. They're trying to do a little bit too much at the plate sometimes. They're trying to do a little bit too much on the mound. So you could tell that they are pressing, and you could tell that there's something going on with this team right now. And obviously when high pressure moments hit, injuries start to happen. And when you try to do too much, maybe you tweak something here, maybe you tweak something there. So I'm not going to attribute it to the high intensity of the games, but it is a terrible time for the Blue Jays to start getting hit with the injury bug. I mean, you saw Trevor Richards just come back, Bichette as well. Kevin Kiermaier was out for the 10 days, and now they just got back. Bo is back out with a quad injury. Matt Chapman is going to be out for at least 10 days, and he hasn't looked good at the plate ever since he came back from that soreness in his middle finger. So who knows what to expect once he comes back. But there's a lot of guys that have to step up right now for the Blue Jays. Davis Schneider is probably one of their key players at this moment of the season. He's batting fourth. He was a 28th round draft pick, a guy who wasn't even called up until maybe about a month ago. So that's the state of this team right now. They got to try to find ways to scrap wins and to try to grind out these wins. And that's the only way you'll make it into the playoffs. You can't backpedal into there.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's desperate times call for desperate measure right now, especially from John Snyder's perspective. And just a week ago, or even a few days ago, the Jays and Buck Martinez said on the broadcast they were very, very healthy. They finally got over the couple injuries they had. Romano came back, Bichette came back, and now just like that, the injuries are picking up at a time where we're still 2.5 games back of a wild card spot, and it, of course, led to the move of putting Matt Chapman on the injured list and calling up Ernie Clement, who I think will be, a solid replacement going forward. I know a lot of people on Jay's Twitter were saying to maybe call up a Relvis, maybe call up Addison Barger, but this is the interesting thing, and let's just get into it now, Peter, and quickly discuss it before we go over today's game a little bit. But before the game, from Ben Nicholson-Smith, Vlad Jr. was taking balls at third base, looks pretty comfortable, arm in midseason form, and he said, while the Blue Jays don't plan to start Vladdy at third, they're legitimately open to using him there in late game situations, and Vlad Jr. said taking ground balls as well, he's very, very comfortable with it. Peter, just get your opinion on this. I wouldn't be completely opposed to it. They're not going to start him there. Of course, we have Espinal. I know a lot. I don't really want to see Espinal out there starting many games, especially with the way Davis Schneider's been playing, continued, his great play tonight, getting on base a couple of times. Ernie Clement is a guy who's been mashing in AAA. What are your thoughts on a potential Vlad Jr., playing at third base, even though it would only be in a very, very unique situation?
Yeah, I said it in the video a couple days ago. I'd like to see Davis Schneider at third base. Maybe give Matt Chapman an off day, and he played at third base yesterday. It wasn't an off day for Matt Chapman, though. It was because he hit the injury list. So now you're kind of backed into a corner for the Toronto Blue Jays. Who goes out there? Who's your everyday third baseman? You saw Whit Merrifield taking ground balls over there, and I'm not too sure I want him playing over there. Now, I definitely don't want Vladdy playing at third base because he hasn't looked exceptionally sharp at first base this year. And I don't know how this is going to translate to the other hot corners. So I'd keep him where he is. I think he's okay at first base. Leave him right there. No need to transition him to third base unless it's out of necessity completely. But right now, I think the job is Davis Schneider's to lose. It should be that way, at least for the present moment in time. And I don't want to see Espinal starting games at third base. I don't want to see Biggio starting games at third base. The way Davis Schneider is swinging the stick right now, you got to keep him out there.
And it almost, makes us think that why wasn't he out there more often? Obviously, again, before he kind of got back in the lineup a couple days ago, he wasn't swinging the bat the best, but he could have been a good replacement compared to even Matt Chapman, who was certainly struggling throughout the year. So I agree. I don't want to see him at third. Maybe, again, if it's a necessity situation and John Schneider's doing whatever he can to win with a pinch hitter, I'll be fine with that. But that transitions well into a little quick, game recap of yesterday's game. And Peter, the offense wasn't crazy. Ernie Clement got a couple hits. Davis Schneider got on base a couple of times. Vladdy's starting to swing the bat a little bit better. But any quick thoughts on tonight's game before we wrap up the video? Much needed win, or yesterday's game, sorry. Much needed win, but again, they don't pick up any ground because the other teams keep winning. And you made a very, very good point earlier. We had our time to pass these teams in the standings earlier in the year, a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately now, who knows if it's too late? We won't know for 30 more games, but they just need to keep winning and not look at the standings because we do not control our own destiny at this very moment.
Yeah, well, as fans, we're obviously going to be scoreboard watching, and I'm sure a lot of you were tuned into that Texas Rangers-New York Mets game. And, of course, in super Mets fashion, they just can't get it done. They give up a 2-run single to Ezekiel Duran in the 9th inning and blow the lead that they had and blow the Blue Jays' chances of gaining some ground. But we can scoreboard watch. The fans, the pundits, whatever you want to call us, we can look at this out-of-town scoreboard and we can judge for ourselves. But the Blue Jays just got to take care of business. It doesn't matter if the Texas Rangers lose one night. It doesn't mean you can take your foot off the gas and you don't have to show up to the ballpark. You got to be ready to play every single day. Now, you're only 2.5 games back. It's not the end of the world. It's not an insurmountable deficit with 30 games remaining in the season. But you still got to go out there and play pretty much perfect baseball until the rest of the year. And you also have a 4-game series against the Texas Rangers, which you need to take at least 3 out of 4 games of. So the Blue Jays got to start picking it up here. Today was a good start. I wouldn't call this a perfect masterclass of a win. However, it's a win, and that's all that matters. It counts in the win column. Doesn't matter how pretty it is. Go out there, win the series tomorrow, and aim for the sweep the next day.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like you said, we can scoreboard watch because we aren't the ones playing the games. If you're the Jays, just win every game you can, especially during this week stretch. And shout out to Kevin Gosse. Had a bit of a bounce-back start in the bullpen who held it down like usual. But that'll wrap up the video. It's a very, very tough time to be a scoreboard watching because there's just so many games going on. And Seems like just yesterday. Yeah, it seems like just yesterday we were 3 games up in the wild card spot. But the Jays have lots of time left. They have 30-odd games left, so they have time to do it. And yeah, that'll wrap the video. Again, apologies for the setup. I'm still on vacation, but for the next video, it'll be all fixed. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.